One of the coolest moments of owning a Sega Genesis early in its life was seeing Golden Axe come home so close to the original arcade version. Yeah, it had its differences, but man, it was a great co-op beat-em-up that really captured the arcade feel. A few years later, Sega released a direct sequel to it simply called Golden Axe 2, an exclusive home project that wasn't related to the arcade sequel, Revenge of Death Adder. This one built off of the first fairly well. The visuals were nice, the sound was serviceable, and the gameplay again quite fun. It gave you a new level of control over your magic use and kept the two-player co-op. Both these games sold well on the Genesis, and Sega decided to do a third home version just for that platform. It was developed by Sega CS, who had done the previous home sequel, so it was gonna be more of the same, right? Not quite. In fact, Sega was so unsure of this new entry it was never released in North America or Europe physically. Was it as bad as all that? Let's find out. Unlike Golden Axe 2, Part 3 here decided to go with an all-new story and an all-new cast of playable heroes. The Prince of Darkness has stolen the Golden Axe and cursed the land, making him and his cronies the new bad guys for you to slaughter. The four new warriors that get to do that are Kronos, part man, part panther, Cain, a human warrior, Sarah, a half-naked human female, and Kragger, a slow but powerful giant. Each of these options have various advantages and disadvantages in regards to speed, reach, and the effectiveness of their moveset. New to Golden Axe is the block function, which allows you to keep many of the damaging attacks of your enemies from harming you. You do this by pressing back and attack, but be advised you must press it each time you wish to block. Each warrior also has various secondary attacks, including dash strikes, high and low jabs, powerful counters, and there is a grapple system in place that's more akin to Streets of Rage than the previous Golden Axe home games. This rounds out to give you a number of things the first two home games did not have and adds some much needed variety to the series. Of course, the screen-filling magic is back, a staple of the franchise since the beginning. Each character has different types and levels of elemental magic to deploy at your command. You don't have the control over it like you did in Part 2, however. It's back to using everything you have like you did in the original. There are also rideable mounts that you can use, but it's a freaking snail with a tongue lash and a set of dragons where one shoots fire along the ground at an angle that can barely hit anything, and the other you can just throw enemies with your head. New to the home series is the choice of different paths to take in some of the stages. At various points throughout the game, you'll get a prompt to choose which path you're gonna take. These paths lead to different parts of the level and ultimately different encounters with your enemies. This isn't just for the variety of it either, as the direction you take can directly affect your ending. That's right, Golden Axe 3 has multiple endings. Depending on the route you take, you face certain enemies that have been possessed by evil spirits. Freeing these captured souls directly impacts the ending you see. Coupled with the number of continues you use, you need to have at least 4 points to see the good ending. In short, make it to the last guy with 2 continues and 2 rescued characters, and you're good for the best ending. This is not to be confused with the regular hostages during the stages you can free. These guys can give you extra lives, but have no effect on the ending at all. Graphically, Golden Axe 3 is a peculiar 1993 release. It was the first and only home Golden Axe that made it to an 8MB cartridge. That would have you thinking that it'd have the best enemy and stage variety in the entire series. Well, you'd be very wrong because Part 3 here is as plain Jane and repetitive visually as they come. Some stages border on no detail at all and use just a few colors and patterns that frankly are well below the standards of the games released around the same time. No joke. There are launch games with more detail than what you'll see here. The lone area that stands out are the large sprites, but even these are marred by weak color palettes and a lack of variety. Outside of the boss guys, you get a set of about 5 repeating enemies, over and over and over again. Even the rideable mounts are palette swaps of one another. I don't think this would have been so bad if it had been released a few years earlier, but the Genesis was in full stride in 1993, and had games like Shinobi 3, Gunstar Heroes, Aladdin, Rocket Knight Adventures, and RoboCop vs. Terminator. Compared to these other 1993 releases, Golden Axe 3 looks like a Master System game in regards to detail and variety, and certainly not the 8 megabit 16-bit title on a mature platform. Even the magic attacks, usually a celebration of eye-popping visual effects for the Golden Axe fans out there, fall short. Some look okay, while others are just a screen full of static. There really is no other way to say it. Golden Axe 3 is a very average-looking game that was well below the better titles the year of its release. The sound and music in Golden Axe 3, surprisingly, is not bad at all. While many of the sound effects are pretty tame, the music itself ranges from decent to quite excellent. No BS, there are actually some really good tunes here. It uses the same SMPS 68000 sound driver that pushes games like Shinobi 3 and Gunstar Heroes, and overall I quite like it. But the appeal of music can be very different ear to ear, so here are a few examples for you to draw your own conclusions. By the time Golden Axe 3 was released for the Mega Drive in Japan, the Revenge of Death Adder had been out in the arcades for a year, so seeing anything come home other than that was a disappointment in itself. But was Golden Axe 3 the pariah it's been made out to be? I believe firmly that the gameplay here is some of the better moments from the series. There are more moves, the grapple system has more freedom, and the inclusion of multiple paths and different endings was a hell of a nice touch. While I wouldn't say Golden Axe 3 is a great game by any stretch of the imagination, I will say there are many, and I mean many beat-em-ups I'd classify as worse. I think that the graphics here are what earned it the scorn of so many. The repetition in assets, the lack of detail in so many of the backgrounds, it really does tarnish this game's legacy on a profound scale. First impressions are a powerful thing in gaming, and right from the very first stage, you get a sense that this could have and should have been so much better looking. The thing is, you actually get a few flashes of brilliance in this regard here and there. There are a handful of times where you see backgrounds and effects that could have really have helped the visual pizzazz, yet these moments come and go quickly and are never expanded upon, or put in the spotlight properly. I just don't get it. Why make cool background effects when you cover it up for 90% of the level? Why weren't these effects front and center, giving each and every stage as much eye candy as possible? Rounding out the critiques is some slowdown in multiplayer that comes up a few times, and you will see some sprite flicker here and there. The shame is that while this completely drops the ball visually, the gameplay and music are done well enough for this to have been quite the worthy addition to your library. As it stands though, this is a very disappointing game graphically that only has a physical version that you have to import. Sega of America was so close to releasing Golden Axe 3, there was actually box art completed for it. As the story goes, they decided last minute that the game was so far below their standards, they simply couldn't release it. I find this story hilarious in some respects because if it's true, you only need to take a moment and look at some of the other stuff Sega of America was responsible for. I mean, Golden Axe 3 is far from a killer app, but when you consider that the same people that poo-pooed its release were also responsible for trash like Green Dog and Chuck on the Forever Man, it's most amusing they pegged this as unworthy of your time. I do recommend you at least try this if you are a fan of beat-em-ups, however. While you will likely be let down like me with the visuals, I think there is enough here to play through it a couple of times. The only other thing that frustrated me was that later enemies can be damage sponges and take way too long to kill. Get yourself a friend and that won't be much of a problem, however. In fact, Golden Axe 3 really isn't that hard of a game once you play it a few times. You should see both those endings in no time. Despite the popular belief that this was never available in North America, that's only true of a physical release, as it did make its way to the Sega Channel in 1995. Since then, it's been released numerous times digitally across console and PC platforms, so you shouldn't have a hard time finding it if you want to own a copy. It's not going to blow your socks off, but I also believe it's far from the garbage so many try to make it out to be. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.